Hey, this is Taria Pritchard, confidence coach for women, and I have really missed you over the last couple of days since I last went live, right? I've been working with clients. I have been doing lesson plans. I have been at conferences. I have been living life. I've been at paint night. So I've just been doing so many things. And I'm happy to finally be back and be in your presence. So I mentioned that I've been to conferences, and one conference that I went to, and I have another one next week that I'll be speaking at, in which you guys know Jasmine Guy from A Different World, and now the Quad will be there presenting as well. So I'm really excited for that conference next week. Well, the conference I went to, I wasn't a speaker, but the speakers there were so powerful, right? And I already shared in the Unleash Your Fear Squad Facebook group a clip of Sarah Jakes Roberts and how, she was sharing up on stage. So I went to a 2-day conference at a church called Seeds of Greatness Bible Church, and it is located in Newcastle, Delaware, right? And they have a ministry there called Girlfriends Ministry. And as Girlfriends Ministry that they have, every year they have a larger event. So last year they had Sarah come, and this year because it was so well received last year, they had Sarah come back, but they added 2 additional speakers, right? They added Katy Kazadi, Katy Kazadi, look at me, I have her name there in case you can't see it. And then they also added a local woman that's very well respected and well known. And her name is Joyce Dungee Proctor, right? So it was 2 days. It was a Friday night and it was an all-day Saturday conference. And they just dropped so many powerful nuggets that, of course, I wanted to come back and share this wisdom with all of you, but also encourage you to follow them online. So go to their Facebook pages, go to their YouTube pages. The majority of them already have, especially Sarah has a huge following already. And obviously you probably know her father, which is Bishop T.D. Jakes, who's very well known, obviously in the U.S., but also worldwide, right, at this point. And she also has an amazing story, right? And she touched on that in bits and pieces because she was a teenage mother, and she also was divorced at a young age. And she's still, at this point, pretty much a millennial, but she has been able to accomplish and overcome so much, right? So each of the women really provided so many gems. And I just know that you will find them valuable. So the entire theme of this conference was called Enjoying the Journey, right? And I've titled this, something similar, right? But not necessarily exactly the same, because I'm like, y'all might not understand the journey. But the journey is simply the life that we live, right? And the life that we lead. And the thought process behind the First Lady. Now, I will say that I am not a member of this church, right? It was open to the public. But the First Lady of this church, which is Alisa, was sharing how she came up with this idea of enjoying the journey, right? And that's something we kind of talk about here all the time because the journey is not always easy, right? Which is why I became a confidence coach for women. And if there's anybody new tuning in, I'm Tara. I should have said that already. And I'm a confidence coach for women. I help women heal, evolve, and grow so that they can manifest the life and love that they desire, right? So, of course, when I'm sitting at this conference, I'm like, oh my God, right? I'm writing down all of these notes. And so many people have come up to me or text me or said, do you work for them? Because you just like went hand with all these notes. Like your detail is like crazy. And I'm like, I don't go to this church. I'm not necessarily endorsing it. I'm not sponsoring it or anything, but I just really enjoy that experience. Right. And whenever I learn something, I feel as though that part of my assignment, right, from God is to go ahead and share that information. So obviously I'm not going to share everything because you will have to be there to hear everything. And you will have to obviously go see these ladies, but I can give a recap of things that I think that will be beneficial to you as you continue on your journey when it comes to your life, right? So again, enjoying the journey is simply when we have so many things going on in our lives, especially when we have been praying for something and then God is making us wait for something, was a huge, huge theme that kind of flow through. Or when we are insecure within ourselves, it can be very hard for you to enjoy life. and enjoy your journey as a woman when you're insecure. Because, you know, when we're insecure, our life doesn't necessarily look the way that we desire on the outside. We don't necessarily attract what we want on the outside, or we might feel like it's taking us longer to accomplish things on the outside, and we can't enjoy the journey. We can't enjoy life if we are in that position, right? So a lot of the wisdom that was shared, I just need to share with you, okay? So I want to start out with Sarah, right? Because she went first out of the three, and her entire message was all about this idea of spitting it out. And she used it in a metaphorical way in terms of Eve from the Bible, because she said that we talk about all these other women from the Bible, but so often we never give Eve her due diligence, because we think that Eve, you know, she was tempted, she did something bad, and then from there, right, this kind of like she put a curse on women, right? So, and what Sarah wanted to reiterate is that with every curse that you ever feel, or anything that's negative when it comes to life, that God always has a promise or something positive or something purposeful that is attached to that negative thing, right? And I know a lot of women come to me and they say, I just don't know the purpose of the pain. Like, why would I have to go through this? And I think in that instance, a lot of us think that we're not like Eve because she was tempted. But how many times have we been tempted by things and we went along with it, and we do it over and over and over again, and then we get mad at ourselves? How are we any different from Eve? But she said, spit it out, right? What if Eve actually did spit that apple out of her mouth, right? And she did not indulge in it, but she came to the realization that, wait, this is not for me. And I'm sure you've had those kind of moments before. But she was just saying, just to think about that, right? What it would mean to spit it out of yourself, right? And spitting it out could come in two different ways. So spitting it out could be simply ridding yourself of insecurities, doubt, fear, and worry, right? And a lot of us, we carry those insecurities wherever we go, and it makes it very, very difficult for us as women to move forward when we're insecure about who we are. We're insecure about our gifts. We're insecure about our bodies. We're insecure about, our capacity to love and to be loved. We're insecure, about our careers and just so on and so forth. Sarah was encouraging us to, maybe that bothers you, maybe that's plagued you, but to reimagine Eve, if Eve would have spit it out, but you have the opportunity to spit it out, right? So what would that look like if you spit out? What would that look like if you spit out and you release and you let go of, and you remember who you are? You remember that you're not your insecurities. You're not your past mistakes. You're not your failures. As I mentioned, Sarah was a teenage mother, and her father is T.D. Jakes. So she grew up in a prominent family, right, who are very much heavily into the church. But then she was the one that kind of, that came home definitely doing something against their Christian values. So you can imagine how she felt at that time, and how, that used to bother her and her confidence and her insecurities. But you can imagine the work that she had to go through, the things she had to spit out in order for her to become who she is now, right? And what really resonated with me was when she mentioned over and over, instead of asking God, why me, or, take this thing away from me, she said, instead, we need to start asking God, who do I need to become so that I can overcome this thing, right? And I share that all the time. So I'm like, okay, she's my spirit animal, right? I always share that with you ladies, is who do you need to become to overcome that thing, or who do you need to become to attract that thing to you? It kind of works either way, right? So again, it's spitting it out, is spitting out insecurities, doubt, fear, worry, all the things you've been holding on to. But she also mentioned spitting it out in a positive way, right? And she went into this whole idea of a good thing versus a God thing, right? But she was saying that God also deposits very purposeful and meaningful things within each of us. However, a lot of us are afraid and scared to spit that out, right? And so not only do we need to spit out the negative stuff, but it's time for you to come up higher, and it's time for you to show out in a deeper way and to spit out what God has anointed you to do, right? And that's going to obviously be in terms of purpose, your career, your strengths, the things that you are really good at. So often we sit on our gifts. We sit on our talents. We sit on money we could honestly be making. We sit on the impact we could really be making in the world because we have these doubts, these fears, and these worries. And she said, when you get to the point where you can spit out, even when you don't feel like it. And she mentioned, I don't always feel like getting up, but I know if I don't get up on this stage, I don't go to that speaking engagement, then somebody's life might not be saved. Somebody out there needs what it is that I am bringing to the table, right? But that goes back to worthiness, and that goes back to confidence, and that goes back to being secure, and not only knowing who you are, knowing whose you are, and then knowing why you are here. Right. And I was like, wow, that really resonates so well with what I typically share, that it was just so in alignment. Right. So again, it's not only spitting out the insecurities. It's not only spitting out the negative stuff. It is also spitting out the things within yourself that make you shine, that make you glow, that make you radiant, that make you stand out in a crowd because God has anointed you. And when you begin the process of spitting that out, as well, she said that you will come up higher, right? That's how you will radiate. People will take note, people will recognize, and people will notice. So your assignment for, for that segment that I learned from Sarah Jakes Roberts about spitting it out is I want you to take inventory of the insecurities that have been plaguing you year after year. It might be some new ones that have popped up because every time you go to a new level, there's a new insecurity that's going to pop up in some way, shape, or form. Right? So it doesn't matter where you are at in your journey. It doesn't matter where you're at in life, but you can enjoy the journey by taking inventory and taking note of your insecurities, right? That seek to hold you back and what you need to spit out. But I also want you to take inventory, and I want you to write down what is inside of you that you need to spit out, in terms of your gifting, your strengths, your purpose. And even if you're still like, I don't know what my purpose is, right? There's still things that you're passionate about. There are still things that you're interested in. If you don't know, then you should be doing trial and error and testing different things out so that you can get to know yourself better and get to know that purpose better. So saying, I don't know is not an excuse. There are so many things you can be doing to test it out and see what works and what doesn't work, what you like and what you don't like on this journey that we call life. So that's no longer an excuse, right? So then we're going to move into Katy Kazadi, who was our second speaker for this Enjoying the Journey conference. And Katy's story was powerful because she has been in ministry for a very long time. And I think now she's just shy of almost coming up on 40 in a couple of years. But her story was one that I feel like a lot of you would resonate with. And it was simply how she was that smart, successful, professional woman. She decided to pursue purpose. She decided to go into ministry and speaking full time. And she decided she was going to travel around the world. She had quit her, cushy full-time job. And decided, I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to go and I'm going to start preaching and speaking and, all around the world. And she did that, and she did it for year after year after year. And then she hit 30 and then 31 and then 32 and then 33. And she really desired to be married and to have a child. And that just did not seem like it was coming to fruition. So if you can relate, give me some hearts or let me know. But she realized that she needed to learn how to be content in that season, right? And she also mentioned that in the age of social media, it's so easy to compare yourself to other women when you're going through a season where you are waiting. And we so often look at other people's fruits that are the fruit that other people are bearing. And we're looking, like she even mentioned, we're looking at other people online and we're looking at the apples they have when maybe God has oranges for us. Maybe he has grapes for us, but we're so quick to compare ourselves and to look at other people and get upset and to get frustrated, right? And if you want to really enjoy life as you continue on this journey, that's not the way to go, right? And she even says that comparison, right, is really the enemy of contentment, right? And you have to learn how to be content with where you are. You have to learn how to not idolize, the destination and the husband and the child, right? That you need to put your focus back on God and recognizing that even when you're waiting, right? So there's a period, when you kind of sow a seed and you kind of say, God, I know this is what I want. And then you actually reap something. And in the middle of that is sowing. And she even said, you know, nothing tests a woman's faith more than when she has to wait for something to manifest in her life, right? But she encourages us to, you know, see in the spiritual realm, right, what you cannot see with your own eyes, right? And she shared how, you know, how divine it was that she met her husband on one of those speaking engagements. She also shared how she was able to manifest her child after going through so many incidences where they thought that they would never have a child, right? And that was a struggle for them, and it really tested them, and it tested their faith. And what she realized is that storms don't last. You know, storms don't last, right? Storms will pass. But as a woman of God and as a woman of faith, you are built to last, right? And if you recognize, and Sarah even mentioned this, that you have an advantage over others when you really believe in God and you really know why he's brought you here, and you really know who you are, and you're really close to him, you will realize you have an advantage, and you're going to walk a little bit differently. You're going to talk a little bit differently when you realize you have that kind of advantage in this life, right? And I think a lot of times we forget that, you know, as we plant seeds and we pray and, you know, I want this husband, I want this kid, I want this and I want that. But, you know, what do you do when you're in that place, in that space of waiting? And I really like how what Katy was sharing when she wanted to manifest her baby, how they started calling, you know, they came up with a name for their baby. They started kind of calling a name out, right? Like she said, you want to see in the spirit what you don't see with your eyes. And I think that's such an important thing to do as you continue on the journey, right? You don't have to go at it on your own. In any way, shape, or form. I'm just looking at my notes, and something else that Katy said that I really like was that God has anointed you and the things and the desires that you want, but he may not have appointed you at this particular time. And it's something that you need to learn how to be content with. And you have to really trust God in knowing that his timing is perfect and that all things happen beautifully in that right divine time. And I think oftentimes we forget that. But one action step that you can take in the meantime of that is start filling yourself up with the things in which God wants for you, right? So start asking God and saying, God, empty me out. Right. And a lot of them mention this over and over. Empty me out and fill me up with what it is that you need. Right. Show me who do I need to become in order to be in a position for what it is that I desire. So if I want this husband, I want to be positioned for it. If I want to be this mom, I want to be in a position to be the best mom that I can be. So empty out my thoughts. You know, if I'm idolizing this particular thing and I really, really just want this husband, take that away from me and fill me up with what you want and what you desire for me. There was a video going around on Facebook of this pastor who was talking about, you know, how a lot of us don't realize we have to get ready for the things that we want, even if we're in a season of waiting and we're content. So he had people kind of double dutching, and he had the ropes going, and he had a guy jumping around, and he had a girl jumping in, right? And then he would tell the girl, just jump in, whatever. And when she would jump in, it would mess the ropes up. And then from there, the ropes would be messed up. And he was like, see, you want God to do something for you, but you're not even ready. So when the woman did jump in, it kind of messed everything up because it wasn't the right divine time. And plus they both weren't positioned or aligned or ready. So he did it again and then it messed up. And then he said, you know what, let me try it. Right. And then he acted as if he was the one who was, you know, already in position and already in alignment and a match for that other mate. So then he definitely, you could tell how he was on the sideline before he jumped into the double dutch. So then he jumped in and then it kept going. It didn't mess up. And he was saying, see, there's always a right divine timing for certain things. But again, when you're in the process of the wait and knowing that you're anointed, but perhaps the time hasn't been appointed yet for you to have a child, for you to have a car, for you to have a home, for you to have your husband, we oftentimes compare ourselves, right? We oftentimes get stuck idolizing those things, and we don't know how to get out of that space and that place. But I would encourage you for those particular seasons, those are going to be the seasons when you're going to be the closest to God probably ever, right? Just because you need him to fill you up and to give you wisdom and to give you insight. And you have to recognize you don't have to go through it on your own during that season. Okay, so that was Sarah, right? So Sarah is all about spit out the insecurities, but also spit out the things that you have been anointed to do. For our second speaker from the conference that I attended would be Katy Kazadi, and her whole thing was about, how you can, almost avoid the waiting that you might be in when you're in a season of waiting, right? And it was a beautiful thing to see her with the waiting, right? It's the sowing, and then it's the reaping, but in the middle it's the waiting. You don't always get what you want automatically. And she even said again, see in the spirit realm what you seek with your own eyes. So start speaking it, start visualizing it, start writing it, right? So those are the things that I usually teach my clients, and those are the things that I do every single morning, every single day, that will completely change your whole freaking life. I'm not even gonna lie to you, right? So it was beautiful that even though she struggled with, having the baby, she really wanted to have the baby at the end. She said, bring my baby up on the stage. So her husband came up and her baby came up, and she said, I just want to show you the physical manifestation of, I went through the pain, I went through the waiting, I went through all of that, and now look at where I am. And it happened in a beautiful divine timing. And she was like, maybe I did want it to happen at 28 years old. But she said, you know what? It happened at 36 years old. It happened for me at 38 years old. And she said, and because of what I went through, she said, it feels so much better for me to have this baby now. And I'm in such a better place than even then when I thought I was ready, but it feels so much even better now at this point in my life, right? So I think a lot of times we think this is the time, I'm ready, boom, boom, boom. But you just never know the plan, right, that God has for your life. So it's really about you being open and you being trusting that God knows what he's doing, that he has already laid out the blueprint, right? And again, if you want help navigating the blueprint, you want help, making it through the wait, who are you going to go to? God, right? It's really that simple, even though and many times I know it can seem so hard, right? So let's move to our last and final speaker, right? So for anybody who's just joining, I'm sharing about a conference that I went to this weekend called Enjoying the Journey, right? Which is all about enjoying life, even when you feel insecure, even when you feel like God is making you wait a long time, or even when life might knock you down and you don't know how to get back up, which is going to bring me to our last and final speaker. And her name was Joyce Dungee Proctor. And she kind of shared her entire history and how she wanted the house, the car, the man, and the baby, right? And she also had challenges in terms of having her baby. But she wanted the husband, and she went after him, and she got all of that. And then she got the job, and then she kept moving up in her job because she was so good. She started making 6 figures. And then once she got to that place, she wasn't home as much. She wasn't with that baby as much. So what she had wanted so badly, she had prayed for so much, when she got, kept moving up in her career sector, she started not giving as much time and attention to all those other things that she once said she wanted to manifest, right? So some of you may or may not be at that stage, but she was supposed to be serving as someone who is a little bit more mature, right? Who, is in their 50s, right? The other 2 women are 40 and under, right? So they're kind of at a different place, but she was supposed to represent kind of that balance that we always say we want all of these things. We want the man, we want the baby, the home, and all of these things. But then what happens when you get them? Right? That's a whole different conversation, and one we don't often think about, because we often idolize that we want that whole picture and we want that thing in our life, right? And she said it takes a lot to admit, when you reflect back on your life and you realize that you could have done things better, right? And I thought that was powerful, because she said, I don't even think I've ever shared this in depth. And a lot of you in this room know me, but don't even realize. So she said she was climbing up that ladder, and, she realized she wasn't spending time with that baby that she prayed for so much. She wasn't really spending time with that husband. She got a brand new house that she got built up and was never, ever there, right? And then years kept going by, and eventually she ended up getting laid off from that job. So what she had put all of her time and energy into, instead of her man, instead of her household, right? She also said she wasn't cooking at home. She really wasn't making it a home either, right? She would just go there just to sleep. She wasn't present because she was just so into, I'm smart, I'm successful, I'm making money, I can do whatever I want, right? And if we're not careful, You know, she's not the only one that can happen to, right? She's not. So she ended up getting laid off. So the things she put so much time and energy into ended up kind of leaving her in a way. And from there, she had to go from the 6-figure job to making $15 an hour selling clothes, right? So that, she said, how it really humbled her. And she had to figure out a way to get herself back together so that she can move forward, because so many people know her. They would even say, why are you working at that one job where you're making that $15 an hour? Like, you know, people know who you are, you know, like that's beneath you. And she said, you know, what I learned is that even though I only made $15 an hour, I still had bills to pay, A, right? And everybody started clapping. But she said, B, I learned that wherever you are in life, whatever season you are in, even if it's $15 an hour, you be excellent at whatever it is that you do. Because people started to notice that she was the best customer service person that they had there, right? Because obviously she was overqualified for the position, but people started to notice, which allowed her to begin the process of advancing again to a whole new level, right? And one of her main pieces of advice was really taking time to look at yourself and to be able to admit things that you may not want to admit about yourself. Because we're quick to say things about other people, right? What they've done to us, what they haven't done, but we're not always quick to admit when we could have been better or we could have done something better, right? It takes a lot of courage. But she also said that sometimes we have to learn how to retreat in order to advance. And I think a lot of us sometimes we're not taking that much needed, you know, self-care and self-reflection time to retreat in order to advance, right? And she said, I had to take time for myself. I had to take time to look at myself in the mirror. I had to take time to sit down and do some journaling. I had to take time to sit down and really look at my flaws, look at what went wrong, look at how can I be more present for this man that is sitting here, for this child that is here. I wanted it so bad. But how can I now be present for what it is that I most desired, right? How can I get back into motion, right? So she said you have to retreat in order to advance. And I absolutely agree with that. So I'm going to suggest to you that in the next couple of weeks that you schedule a day. Maybe you want to take off from work. Maybe you want to get a babysitter. But you don't have any responsibilities. You're not doing anything around your home. You don't have to do anything with your children. You don't have to do anything for work. That's just all about you. It's all about self-care. It's all about self-reflection, right? And it's all about you, you know, building your relationship with God. It's all about you building relationship with self. And maybe you want to go do a little getaway and even go to a hotel, get out of your home or your normal environment. But I encourage you to do that so you can retreat in order for you to advance, right? When you have that time to yourself where you're able to retreat, you don't have to worry about doing the dishes. You don't have to worry about doing stuff for your job. You have to worry about doing something, you know, for your man or your kids or whatever the case may be. We need that time. And I think oftentimes we get lost in our careers. We get lost in our relationships. We get lost in our children because it's so easy to, which is what Joyce was saying. It's so easy for me to get lost in this thing. And even though I had all of these desires, I lost sight of them along the way. And it was hard for me to admit that, but it's the truth, right? And she's even said, I noticed that in my insecurities, in my flaws, in my lack, you know, in my unworthiness and my inability to be present for my husband and my inability to be present for my kid, I realized that those were actually gifts because they actually helped me. It seemed negative at the time, but it's actually what helped bring me back to myself. In many ways, right? So at the end, she said, now she's present. Now she cooks. Now she's connected to her son. Now she's been married for over 30 years and she's put in the work to make that happen, right? But she had to come to those realizations. And again, she said she had to retreat, have time to herself in order to advance herself in her marriage and in order to advance herself to get back into the game when it came to her career and being a better mom, right? So let's just do a quick recap before we wrap up. So again, I said I attended the Enjoying the Journey conference in Newcastle, Delaware. And we had Sarah Jakes Roberts, and her message was to spit out those insecurities and spit out what you've been anointed to do at the same time. And then the second speaker was Katy Kazadi, who talked all about waiting, right? And how, you know, sometimes when we're waiting, we begin comparing ourselves and our journeys and our lives to other women, which also causes insecurity. But you cannot look at somebody else's fruit, right? You have to focus on your own self And you have to learn how to be content. You have to learn how to see in the spiritual realm what you don't see in the physical realm just yet, and believe that God is going to bring those things to you and bring those things to fruition. And then last but not least, from our last speaker, Joyce Dungee Proctor, the message that I received from her is, again, it takes real courage to admit when you are, when you cause problems, or when there are things that are part of you that cause relationships to go a certain way, or that cause, certain things to happen that maybe you didn't intend to, but recognizing that you have flaws too, and recognizing that you're not perfect too, right? But also, she said, in order to advance that, you need to have time to retreat and to self-reflect, right, on yourself and on your journey. And I have encouraged you to spend time, and I encourage you to do this at least once a month, where you have your day off, where you don't have any responsibilities at home or at work. So you're not feeling guilty for not being with your child. You're not feeling guilty for not doing stuff for work. And you're able to let go, and you're able to take that bath. You're able to do that prayer. You're able to do that journaling and unpack things that you usually don't have the time to do or the capacity to do. It is so important to learn how to retreat and to self-reflect, because that is really what allows you to advance yourself at every single level, right? So hopefully you have found this valuable. Again, the conference was such a blessing to me. I actually received tickets as a Christmas present. And I actually sowed that seed. And I took a ticket, but then I also gave it to a friend who, really needed it because there's a lot that she's going through. And she just kept telling me, I can't express to you in words right now just how grateful I am that you asked me to come with you to this conference, because you have no idea how much I needed all of this. So that was great. That was definitely something that I was grateful to hear. But it was over 1,000 women there, and it was such a blessed time. So I hope that that through this recap of the conference and the things that I learned, as I'm sharing them with you, that they were beneficial to you, depending on what season you're in, depending on what you need to spit out, depending on what you're waiting on God for, depending on whether or not you have retreated or self-reflected in a long time. My hope is that you have found some value in what it is that I have shared here in this video. And if you feel like you want to go deeper, then I encourage you to sign up for a Fierce Clarity Breakthrough session with me. And you can find the link in the caption so that you can go ahead and sign up and we can talk. So I'm going to sign up, and I will talk to you soon.